Month Amika's presentation.
Okay, no problem.
Since we are breaking up in 1 hour.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. So we started nearly 45 minutes late, and I've been told that our session is reduced to 60 minutes in place of 90 minutes. So we will have around 7 minutes each, and the rest of the time we will use for the question and answer session. And we have with us panel members, Ms. Archana Samudra, Vice President, Polash Healthcare Systems. Then Dr. Shailesh Puntam Becker, Managing Director, Galaxy Care Hospital. Dr. Praveen D. Poddar, Head Department of Molecular Medicine and Biology, Jaslok Hospital. And Dr. Sandeep Salonke, Medical Director. And Dr. Samita Jadhav, Deputy Director, Academics, Symbiosis Institute. So I thought that I will do in a little reverse manner. So let us start with the panelists, and then I will come at the end, and then we'll see how the things are happening, and accordingly I can adjust my timing. So first I will request Dr. Shailesh Puntametkar to present. That they will do.
Good afternoon, everybody. At the outset, let me thank the organizers for inviting me. This topic is very exciting, and I thought I'll just give you a little brief outlook of what is the new technology bringing to us as a surgeon. And in the next few minutes, I think as the evolution in the human race is taking place, so much is the evolution taking place in the technology. And the biggest technological revolution that is taking place today is that a lot of surgeries are now being done through the keyhole. If you ask one human being, what is your ultimate aim when you want to perform the surgeries, there are two things. One, they want a scarless surgery, and the second thing that they want is immortality. Immortality is out of question. Scarless surgery is a very much possibility as of now. And what do you mean by scarless surgery is that except for the babies which can be taken out from the uterus, there is no organ which cannot be taken out by using the keyhole technology. So much so that we have now advanced to the technology of what is called as the robotic technology. When I was being trained as an open surgeon, I was always being told that big surgeons take big incisions. Today the technology has changed to such an extent that big surgeons take no incisions. The biggest surgeons in the world do not take incisions, approach the organ with various orifices, and of course through the keyhole. As a result of which, initially we used to see and cut. Now what is happening with the technology is that the man or the woman who sits on the console actually sees 40 times magnified image, and as a result of which you can cut better, see better. When you see better, you do better. When you do better, the recovery is better. It's a very simple way to understand. And the most important thing is that it is now bringing in the robotic surgery. What you understand by robotic surgery is that it leads to a huge amount of computer-aided surgery. In a robotic surgery, one thing if you see, if you go and buy, when we had these Premier Padmini cars, the Premier Padmini cars, I remember my father coming and telling me, my car is wonderful, I am so lucky to get a good engine. Nowadays we don't talk about it, because when you go to BMW, when you go to any organization and buy anything or buy a mobile phone, you are very sure about how it will work in today's era. Is this the same standard of care that we can have in healthcare? The answer to this is no. And therefore you have the division of surgeons as excellent surgeons, good surgeons, average surgeons. I'll give you a definition of surgeons. The surgeons are divided into 4 categories. Category 1 is extremely intelligent surgeons but who are lazy. Do you know what they do? They write books. Then part 2 is extremely intelligent surgeons and very hardworking. They are the best surgeons. Part 3 surgeons are extremely docile and very lazy, no harm to the society. It's the category 4 surgeons who are extremely enthusiastic but very dumb. They have the harm to the society. How does a patient know that he will get the best of the health care? Because the patient goes blindly to a surgeon. So you need to have a kind of a machine which will bridge the gap between having the skills and having not. And this is where the robo comes into the picture. At no point of time are you worried whether the surgeon is good, bad, ugly, whether the surgeon is average, whether he is intelligent, because robo helps you to do the same quality of surgery irrespective of the surgeon, irrespective of the time of surgery, and irrespective of what kind of surgery that you are doing. So this is a kind of total integration of the surgical care, and this is not something which I am talking superfluous. This is something which is existing very much in Pune. This is existing worldwide. Now, if you have a machine which shows that you need to cut only 1 centimeter, the best of the surgeons will cut 1 centimeter maybe early in the morning, maybe not in the afternoon, definitely not late in the evening. This is a machine which is so precise, which you see 40 times magnified picture. It is like driving a car on a 10-lane expressway in a broad daylight without a single existing car. There is very, very little scope for accidents, and this is a kind of technology that we are getting into this totally integrated system. So we can define the organ, we can see the organ, we can magnify the organ. Where's the question of damage? So finally in healthcare, there is a technology which has come into the picture. Maybe that will take care of an individual. Nobody will say, well, Dr. Puntambekar is a great surgeon. Maybe you as an individual will cease to exist. But what is the most important client in our entire practice? Why do we become good doctors? We become good doctors to give good consumers good treatment. There won't be any medico-legal problems. Dr. Dore Patil was talking about it. When at any point of time, irrespective of any kind of emotional attachment, you will continue to do good surgery, excellent surgery, and absolutely precise surgery. So this is a minimal invasive surgery. There are various types of surgery you can do. You would always be wondering that we could take out the organs which are inside the chest or inside the abdominal cavity, because there are cavities which are existing. But the technology has advanced to such an extent that we are taking out organs like thyroids, we are taking out organs like submandibular glands, we are taking out organs in the leg, we are taking out the varicose veins, and we are also going through the vaginas and taking out the gallbladders. So where is the technology leading to? The technology is leading to such kind of thing. And this is what you can do. You can see that a single umbilicus, that is the navel through which you can put in the scopes, you can put in multiple instruments, and you can do this. Now 10 years back, this was something unimaginable. Today, except for the fact that there is the only limitation in doing this kind of surgery does not lie in the instrumentation, it lies with the surgeon's mindset. If the surgeon's mindset is good, if the surgeon decides to operate, then you can do almost anything. And this is what is now coming into the picture. This is now as the orifice assisted single incision surgery. That is when you go through the orifice. Now, the demand and the supply is huge difference. There are excellently trained surgeons, but the limitation of the entire practice is not because one doesn't want to do it, but one can't do it. So there is a huge mismatch between having the good skilled surgeons and not having good surgeons. But unfortunately, the demand has gone extremely high, so much so that you can see in the picture that the lady comes and demands that I want my cesarean section done through keyhole. Now, patients are coming to us to get their pile surgery done through the keyhole. This is like extending too much to this. So this is the way in which the previous surgery was being done, opening the abdomen. This was like eating the rice in the plate with your hand. Today we have started eating the rice with the chopsticks. We were not trained to eat with the chopsticks, but we have developed the skills to have the chopsticks. And in addition to that, there is an integrated robotic surgery which actually guides you to the exact organ, tells you that there is an artery, tells you that there is a vein, tells you that this is an organ which is extremely critical, you should not go near it, it warns you, you can have a cup of tea outside, tell your assistant to do the surgery by marking that area. What more do you want in this today's era? Now the problem is, when we started the robotic surgery, the newspapers in Pune carried foul. They said that the surgeon is not close to the patient, and therefore if anything goes wrong with the patient, the surgeon is sitting somewhere in the outside room trying to do the surgery. Completely fallacious. You are doing the surgery with extreme magnification, and there is no fear because it can be done easily. And these robotic surgeries are now being done with the kind of robots which are here. So actually, robot and the surgeon is like a master and slave relation. So as good is the master, as good is the slave. If your master is bad, doesn't know his anatomy, doesn't know his steps, naturally the technology is bad. The technology is always there. The technology is correctly made for you. It is for us to understand the technology. And I really see no reason for doctors who are of, I was trained in a pre-laparoscopic era, and I see no reasons for anybody to embrace this technology. We are embracing new phones, we are embracing new cars, we are embracing everything. But when it comes to healthcare, this is the problem. If you see in today's era, ladies and gentlemen, we just have, when I started robotic surgery in 2009, ours was the 5th robo in the country, and today, even after 5 years of continuously publishing and doing this kind of robotic surgery, transmitting to various countries, we still have just 26 robos in the country. And the reason is because we have the best of the infrastructure, we have the best of the marbles from the country, we have the best. Every CEO of every company will take you through the hospital visits, showing you how beautiful marbly created, how integrated OT systems are there, how they have the linear airflow and X and Y and Z, but they don't have the machinery. Now this is a machine which is needed because this will give you the best of the surgery at every point of time. So much so that sitting in Pune, I can operate on a patient in Bangalore. So if you have the best of the surgeons, and there are many patients who want to get the robotic surgeries done, then the surgeon need not visit to his place. He can sit at one place, telemonitor the other patients, you can do the telesurgery. And in fact, the first telesurgery of the world was done by the patient was in Strasbourg, the surgeon was in New York. It was a transatlantic surgery, and this surgery was named after a pilot which actually flew the first flight transatlantic. This operation is called as the Lindbergh's operation. Lindbergh was the first pilot who drew this, and this robo is also called as Da Vinci. It is called as the Da Vinci robo. Just to give you a history for people who do not know, is Da Vinci was a great painter of 1400s. And if you go to the Roman Catholic Church today in Vatican, there is a big man who has drawn, and he has said that there will be an instrument called as Robota. One day, he will operate on the human beings instead of a human being. 600 years back, a man imagined. It came after 600 years. We are still imagining, still trying to criticize, still trying to analyze, still trying to build the best infrastructure. We are not worried about the technology because humans and technology are the most important part. These are the various ways in which the robotic surgery is done. And finally, what is the future of robotic surgery today? And this is not something which I am telling you, which is coming out of dreams, is manless surgery. You have heard about manless, pilotless, the aeroplanes which are taking place. Now, the robotic surgeries, the prostate surgeries, 180 of them have been done in the world without the surgeon existing in the operation theater. This is something unimaginable. This is something unimaginable at this present site, but be assured that when you board a flight from Bombay to anywhere in the world, you don't ask about the qualifications of the pilot. You don't ask whether he is he, she or it. You just board it because you believe the machine will be safe enough to take you from one destination to another. So the question, ladies and gentlemen, is have we reached this era when the surgeon becomes faceless, surgery becomes extremely safe, guaranteed and always good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sailesh. Now I request Ms. Archana Samudra, Vice President, to present.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Yeah. We've been talking about hardcore healthcare, surgeries and everything. I'll be completely concentrating on digitizing or computerizing the entire healthcare scenario. I belong from a healthcare company which has developed many solutions for the healthcare providers, various healthcare providers on its flagship platform, Palash. All right. The global scenario in healthcare or in general we can say, has undergone a renaissance after development of technology as such, and particularly after development of ICT, there has been a dramatic change in everything that we see. Now we can say, in a nutshell, I can say that everything is a click away. Everything is a click away. What IT is trying to do in healthcare is similar to all this. IT is trying to bring in whatever is required for a healthcare provider a click away. And with this, it's not only the records that are maintained, the patient records that are maintained, but it is everything. It is process management that comes in this, and making this process management very, very easy is what we aim at. It is very essential to ease this, because everybody today is short of time. Everybody wants maximum result in minimum time, and this is possible only through IT. Maintenance of patient records, we can say, for the doctors, now what we are trying to do is, it should be available, it should be accessible, very easily accessible at any point of time. Any point of time he should be able to go through the records and arrange for his treatment at any point of time. And this accessibility is made possible through various mobile devices and other gadgets like iPods or iPads, tablets, so which is now it's becoming very simple. All this is, you can say, at a point of time it is a dream come true for all of us, but it is happening. It is happening not only in the private sector, but now the government is also becoming aware. There are, in fact, the government hospitals and the public health centers, the small places, they are all getting connected to IT in various manners. It is becoming very, very easy to access and reach the patients at a very fast pace. It is very essential because in country like India, where roads or facilities, transport facilities are not so good at rural areas, in such places it's very essential that the doctor can reach the patient at the earliest, and this can be made possible through such programs. E-Mamta, for example, which is run in Gujarat, is an example where we can say that it is very easy for the pregnant ladies and the newborn babies to get assistance through mobile phones and other technology, mobile-based technology. UNESCO too is running certain programs in various different countries where such devices are used in order to reach every required help to the patients. Apart from this, there are certain organizations that are working for patient care and who are running such programs for reaching out to the patients at a fast pace. Similarly, what we can achieve through all this is better health care, not only for the patients, it is for everyone. Reduced time, easy access to the records, most importantly the privacy, the legitimacy of the records is maintained properly through IT, through the technology. It is maintained in a proper manner, and the prescribing has become more easy. It has become flawless, which is very helpful because all the human errors are almost, you can say, all the human errors are almost eradicated in this entire program, in the entire process. I won't take much time. Palash has always been associated with healthcare and in a very proud manner. Very soon we too are launching an initiative which will be a sort of healthcare mall where every facility related to healthcare will be made available to patients and also doctors. Doctors will be able to give the required help to any patient from any point of time, from anywhere they are in the world, and at the same time the patients will be able to get doorstep help for everything and any of the healthcare requirement that they face. Let it be pharmacy, let it be immediate emergency help that requires to be taken, the patient to be taken to the hospital. Any sort of help will be rendered to the patient at just a phone call or an SMS or any way of communication that is required. So, stating all this, I can say that technology is playing a very important role nowadays in healthcare. It has become a major part of healthcare, and we all should be using it, making optimum use of it in order to take healthcare to its apex and best. We have to deliver healthcare not only in order to cure the sick, but in order to keep the sickness itself away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Archana. Now I request Dr. Praveen D. Poddar to present.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before starting, I would like to thank organizers for giving me an opportunity to share my experience in molecular diagnostic. Now, you all know that human genome has been sequenced in 2003 by Dr. Francis Collin from NIH, and since then, the molecular diagnostic has been introduced into the medicinal faculties, and which is, I feel that it is very, very important faculties, and even people have the problem that it is a costly affair. But if you, I am going to tell you, if it is a number, just now Director Thyrocare has shown that if the number of samples will be more, we can afford to give in the better cost, and cost is very important in India, and I really look forward that we can give this particular testing in a very limited cost. So as you know that after human genome has sequenced, several companies has come forward and they have started working on different tests to set up. What is the most important thing in molecular diagnostic is that these tests are PCR based tests. It's required small amount of blood. They are very sensitive. The one more thing is that they can diagnose as well as they can use for the therapeutic modeling. So today I will just give in 7 minutes the brief idea of the work which we have done at Jaslok Hospital, and then I will just tell you the success story of our department. Now, I was also a fellow of NIH, and it was proud that NIH is involved in that. Now, we have seen that if we see that globally the molecular diagnostic market is very, very high. It is around $7,953 million, which will reach to 2018. It is not a less market in India also, but if you see the overall prescription of the medical diagnostic programs in all over India or in the Maharashtra, it's very limited. It is only focused to the metropolitan cities, and this diagnosis has not been done several places. Now, since last 9 years, I am working at Jaslok Hospital, and after training from abroad, means I have first learned the molecular biology at NIH, where I was a scientist for 1 year, and that was my base for molecular biology. After working in this Jaslok Hospital, I found that there are good facilities for developing the test for molecular diagnostic. So my first aim of working in the molecular diagnostic is when I have gone to the Jaslok Hospital, it is not only for the cancer. Actually, I have been working in cancer research for last 30 years. So besides cancer, there are several diseases which needs the molecular diagnostic program, and I have taken that challenge of establishing the molecular diagnostic test for cancer, molecular diagnostic for infectious disease, molecular neurological disorders, genetical disorders, hematological disorders, and I have to further go to the metabolic syndrome, which is not been done so far. Now, you know, they have the basic instrumentations required are PCR, real-time PCR, and sequencing. But most of the places we can have the real-time PCR and PCR can work out, and for sequencing we can do the outsourcing, because it is not possible to maintain the sequencer, DNA sequencer in the lab in the small setup, because it is very expensive. The major technology which generally types of molecular diagnostic are generally is the PCR, which is a conventional PCR, and there are many laboratories. These facilities has been given by several laboratories to do the conventional PCR. But conventional PCR is not only important because that only gives the positive or negativity, but doesn't give the proper count. For example, real-time PCR for infectious disease, you really get the number of viruses present in the body at that time, so that you can give the therapy and further check the viral load and see whether this is responsive. So now the market is for real-time PCR, and real-time PCR is very, very important to monitor mainly for the infectious disease in some of the cancers like chronic myeloid leukemia. Third one is the sequencing. This is also very important now, but I have told you that sequencer is not possible for everyone, but there are outsourcing. There are many companies have come out to give the sequencing, so we can do the mutational studies by using those outsourcing. That is, there are several mutations has been shown to lead to the therapy of the cancer. Lung cancer has EGFR mutations, then chronic myeloid leukemia, you can see the imatinib resistance, and then you can change the therapy. So mutational studies is very, very important to the therapeutic management of the disease. Then very recently now microarray technology has come, but still several companies have approached for the microarray technology, but still it is very costly. What is microarray technology? You can see the number of genes in one test, but still it is very important because which genes are required by the clinicians. So whenever the company person comes to me and say me, we have develop a microarray, I first tell him that better you ask the clinicians what tests they require, because the tests which are not required, you cannot put the cost on that, and that is unnecessarily. But still the companies are working on this. Now they can develop the microarray as per our convenience, also as per our requirements, and there are some companies that work is going on. And now very latest is the next generation sequencing. What is that? Next generation is just a sequencing, it is the fastest one. We can get the results of the whole genome of the particular gene in very short time. So you don't need to now, for example, I am coming to the BRCA1, BRCA2. If we have 27 exons and for BRCA1, BRCA2, and so we have to carry out 70 tests, 70 days. This can be done very fast in next generation. I don't know the cost of this, but this has been latest innovation in the molecular diagnostic, and that is very important to evaluate the genetical diseases, cancer, infectious diseases, neurological disorders. Coming to some of the work which I did in my Jaslok Hospital. First, after coming from MD Anderson Cancer Center as a fellow scientist for working for 3 years, this is one of the best institutions in cancer research. I was working on the molecular targeted therapy in prostate cancer and pancreatic cancer. When I joined Jaslok Hospital, I thought of working on breast cancer, which is one of the prominent cancer in India, and mainly the hereditary based cancer. If mother is having cancer, then whether the daughter and the daughter's daughter can have the cancers can be predicted. And this is very easy for in India because everyone knows the relatives. They know the grandfather, grand-to-grandfather, So this will not be situation in US. It's very difficult to get all the family history of the patients. I will tell you in my work for last 6 years I am working on this project. It was approved by the Scientific Advisory Jaslok Hospital. They are funded. And very limited funded, I have worked complete genome sequence of BRCA on BRCA2. And I have scanned more than 45 families. Each family may be a minimum of 5 members. One family I got, one Gujarati family. There are 22 members and 10 members have the breast cancer. Not only breast cancer, they have the different cancers incidence in their family. That shows that they are very high risk family and there is need of this particular investigation. I have completed this work on BRCA2 and I have already implemented this test in market in the Jaslok Hospital. And this is, as I told you, that this is very important test. Those family have the family history of the breast cancer, they should do this test. Now the cost is concerned. Cost is very much concerned. Presently, I have put full genome sequences, but we can narrow down the test to show that suppose there is a founder mutation in family, we can just tag that mutation for testing. So if we get a mother sequence done for full sequence, we will come to know which exons have the mutations. Those exons only can be done for the daughter and their further relatives, So this way the cost can be reduced. So this is one of the testing which I done. Next is very important test is the real-time PCR for BCR-ABL gene, which is a chronic myeloid leukemia. We all know that chronic myeloid leukemia can be cured by giving the targeted therapy, imatinib or Gleevec is the drugs which has already been come. But the monitoring of these drugs is very important. And I have done in my laboratory, and there are some patients who came to follow up to me. They have now zero gene BCR-ABL fusion gene, and they are almost cured. So this monitoring is very important, and that can be done by the real-time PCR. By doing the BCR-ABL real-time PCR in this. There are other factor V latent, which is also one of the tests for hematological disorders. Besides this, I have already set up the JAK2 mutations, NPN mutations, FLT. I cannot tell you full details about this because there is a short of time. Then neurological disorders. Neurology is really very complicated. One neurologist, they cannot differentiate sometimes on the symptoms because most of the symptoms are same. So in this situation, we have the neurological tests like cynospiralo ataxia 1, 2, 3, and 6 and 7. These are the 5 major genes which are involved in the some of the symptoms, and we have done extensive work on this, and we get lot of samples from all over India also, and we are really diagnosed some of the disease which are very prominent in the some regions and people are not aware of it. In Kutch region, I have to give one examples of the one Kutch from the Kutch one family has come, and they all gets after 30 they remain immobile in the house and they are not knowing. So that family has been one of the family has been referred to me in my lab, and we found that they were have the positivity of SCA1 in the heredity. And then I checked about 5-6 members, and they out of 5-6 members, 3 members were having these mutations. So this way we can able to diagnose this, and this is very important study as concerned to the India. Then coming to the infectious disease, it is a major part in India where we have to really work on lot on the infectious disease like HBV, HCV, HIV. So these are the major things, and they need the this test. Molecular diagnostic is a major part in diagnosing and therapies of this disease. I already told about the real-time PCR. So that's why real-time PCR we can monitor the treatment of this disease, as well as next one is the drug resistance test, HIV drug resistance test, because we know that doctors give the drugs and doctor doesn't know, and we cannot able to judge that whether it is responding. But the developing drug resistance test was a really tough task for me, but I have done this sequence-based drug resistance, and we have already located some of the mutations. If these mutations will be there in the patients, I can say these drugs should not be prescribed. So this is one of the important tests which we have already launched, not launched, we are going to launch in this hospital. We have already completed. Second is a Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Lot of MDXR and a lot of things are coming in the paper, but nobody knows which are the diagnosis. And here also we have really worked hard to get a sequence-based program for the M tuberculosis, where we have sequenced about 9 genes involved in the first-line drugs, and 3 in the second line drugs, and if the mutation we found, we can definitely find out which drug is responsible and which drug should be given, because most of the drugs which are given in M. tuberculosis are very toxic to the liver, and there is a doctor also say you will get jaundice. So when he gets the jaundice, he is again infected with something else. So that's why. So these are all testing. There are so many. I have developed almost more than 50 tests at Jaslok, and what I feel that there is a very great need in the molecular diagnostic in all over Maharashtra, because except some of the metropolitan cities or multiplex, multi-specialist hospital, these tests are going on. But these are very, very essential to diagnose, because diagnosis is very important than having further treatment, because without diagnosis, and we see that our relative goes and he does all tests repeatedly, conventional tests, he doesn't get dengue, then he go for the typhoid, then lastly he comes to the tuberculosis. So this should not happen. Molecular diagnostic will give the definite conclusion of the test that okay, he is a positive or negative, whether this drug is getting effective him or not. So these all sort of problem can be solved in the molecular. And I personally feel that this is very important area, though the cost is at present is high, but if number of samples will be more, we can definitely reduce the cost and give the patients better support, and these are very important and very important to know. So overall my message to the Maharashtra government is that provide basic accredited molecular diagnostic lab to all government hospitals, because the general PCR costs only 2 lakhs rupees. And you must have a trained person. See, last 9 years, I have trained more than 500 students in my laboratory for molecular biology, biology technology, So these techniques should be learned and they should know properly. Then you can set up a small laboratory in each clinic of the government hospital, because this is very essential, because their sample load is high. So you can definitely able to afford the cost, and we can give less cost to the patient. So this is my general idea. Set up a centralized laboratory where they can do more sophistication, and so special samples can be sent to because these are DNAs are stable, RNA they have to take more precaution to send, because that is the way all commercial laboratories are doing in this case, and there is need to well experienced molecular biologists to look after this laboratory with R&D units attached to this facility. I am thankful to you all to give me opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen. Now I request Dr. Sandeep Salonke.
पेन ड्राइव लोड करनी है किया ना Good afternoon, Honorable Chairman Sir, respected dignitaries in the audience, and the dear delegates. I bring warm wishes and greetings on behalf of Director of Health Services and State Blood Transfusion Council. Through my successive slides unfolding, I will try to give our brief experience, and I also pick up from my last speakers that somebody is trying to give a message to the government, and Honorable Vice Chairman earlier also spoke that government should take an initiative. Probably this is a one department where we would like to share that the initiative was started much earlier, way back, say in 1996, when the blood transfusion services were totally unorganized and disfragmented. Almost existence was not there, blood supply was very erratic, blood supply was also not very safe, and the source was not known. So all those problems were there, and luckily to us, the late S.D. Shuri's public interest litigation came to our help, and the Honorable Supreme Court gave the judgment of giving the directives to the government to take an initiative. So the government of Maharashtra took the initiative and started registering a State Blood Transfusion Council, and this is that landmark judgment. So I will try to give you a brief what was the existence before and how we have developed this over these last 2 decades or almost 2 decades, how we have developed the blood transfusion services, and whether we have achieved a success or not is left to you to assess. The total blood collection unit at that time was always in deficiency. Voluntary blood collection was almost nearly 30 or 38%. HIV seropositivity was very, very high at that time. And general state of blood bank affairs was, it was totally fragmented. Non-availability of MIS program, sporadic training activities were there. There was overall no nodal agency who was monitoring all these blood transfusion activities. This is at the backdrop. If you know, some of the seniors will be knowing that when the onslaught of HIV had just arrived in India in the late 1980s and early 90s. And this was a scenario, and one of the early HIV case was being attributed to blood transfusion. So the blood banks were at a very high target. There was a lot of adverse publicity, and there was a lot of pressure on the public sector and the government and various agencies to have a proper and safe blood. So this is how the blood management started, and this is currently the management affairs who is overlooking the State Blood Transfusion Council, and it is headed by the honorable chairman, who is a public health secretary, director of health services, director of medical education, drug controllers, the law implementing agencies also there, NGO agencies and reputed institutions are also there. So this is how we started with that with the State Blood Transfusion Council. So voluntary blood donation organization. So we grabbed all sorts of technologies or all sorts of the whatever possible at that time, and gradually we unfolded and developed the leadership in this particular field of blood transfusion services. So we started using mass IEC media. A lot of things were there. Even I remember about in 1990s or 1995, Matthew Ogley and all such public, the very well-known advertising agencies were also ramped in, and they were consulted how to develop the role models, how to develop IEC material for mobilizing the voluntary blood donations. So all these efforts, various efforts have been taken. And we also came to know that the women participation is very less, and most of the time the blood is being utilized by the women patients. So we also gradually focus this particular segment also. Then a lot of innovative the IEC materials were designed and being used for this. So the subsequent slides will show you that how we utilize the expertise in this particular field and gradually impress upon that. At the same time, we are also targeting that these are some of the highlights of problems. So let the community participate in that. So various sections of the community were also tried to involve in voluntary blood donation. So all these messages were subtly being circulated. Most of you must have seen it across the TV, across the big hoardings, etc. Some of you might have received also this kind of greetings also. So this is one of the appealing this thing. If you cannot participate in at least war footing, at least you donate blood and help the country. Then how to celebrate this thing? We started involving the government and top notch. So governor and his associates and his employees also started giving blood donation, and like that we went on. So birthday clubs, adopting the thalassemia children. So all sorts of innovative methods were also involved in the voluntary blood donation and improving the voluntary blood donation this thing. So gradually, so along with that, we also started undertaking a lot of educational and training activities. So we started utilizing the doctors, we started utilizing the technicians, blood banks. We also gave lectures to the commissioner, the FDA people also, how to properly inspect the bloods, what are the importance. So all these things were also taken care through various activities. You must have seen that I myself was participant of this Guinness World Record in way back in around 1999. This was our first Guinness record. Then subsequently we broke our own Guinness record by all these things. So all these things during the summer vacation particularly. So all these bloods were almost 30, 60, 80 blood banks were involved in this. Throughout the Maharashtra, all this blood went across, and especially summer days, the shortage of blood, etc., we also taken care of. So we also thought of initiating some initiatives like there are many donors who have done more than 100 times. So the Centurion blood donors, etc. So felicitation of such donors, highlighting, giving them some importance, giving them some VIP treatment, and making there's a social recognition. So all this helped our voluntary blood donation. Like this is also one of the recent activity we undertook by accident at the hands of Honorable Deputy Chief Minister and Health Minister, etc. So today, I think at least particularly this audience, the availability of blood supply or blood and blood products is not an issue. But if you think still as a country from say Kanyakumari to Kashmir or Kutch to Kohima, then there is a problem. Even in this part of state, for example, say Bandia to Chanda, we talk about, probably this particular western region may not face the problem, but still availability of blood, sustainability of that blood supply, safety of blood supply, and all these things. And currently we are only testing for 4 or 5 the infections. And there are a lot of emerging infections which are coming across. Lot of medical tourism is also taking place. Lot of foreigners are coming. Lot of accrediting agencies are also insisting on all these accreditation, licensing, etc. So all these things, that means emerging infectious diseases will be also another problem and another challenge for blood transfusion services. Rightly, my previous speaker also spoke about the molecular diagnostic. So a lot of that. So in spite of all these, improving the technology, embracing the technology, as well as availability of that, so NAT testing is also there in the now blood transfusion services. So trying to bring down or trying to give you at least zero level, it may not be zero level, but at least nearer to zero risk blood supply or safety of the blood, we are trying to ensure. So currently we are proud to say that almost 76 government blood banks are there. Most of them in major blood banks, then trust organizations are adopting. So more than 300 blood banks are there. Most of them are all licensed, and I am very proud to say that currently the organization which I head is already NABH accredited. It is one of the largest, not in this state but entire country, in the public sector. This is the only public sector blood transfusion service facility which is having a NABH accreditation. It is in the 5th year of NABH accreditation. So Government of Maharashtra and SBDC has taken already an initiative and trying to tell you that the importance of accreditation and all this, particularly as far as the health facility is concerned. I am also told that Gujarat and other governments are also similarly taking the steps of having accreditation to their healthcare facilities. So these are the various infrastructures now. So when there was no health infrastructure, rightly Dr. Manisha said in the earlier remarks that you require for best outcome, health outcome or best clinical outcome, you require best infrastructure. So you must have seen that from 1996 to today's 2014, there was no infrastructure. So we developed that infrastructure, we developed the manpower, we developed all these facilities, we embraced the technology. I will show you subsequently how we embraced the new technology and how we achieved this result. See some of these areas now, most of the district hospitals and most of the regional centers, some of them are in Red Cross, some of them are in corporate, some of them are in the corporate, the trust blood banks, they are all having a component. So availability of blood and blood product across the state is not a problem today. So this is how we rose our blood supply line, say right from 1996, which was 3.6 lakh units. So today now we are reaching to almost 15 lakhs units of blood collection. And percentage of voluntary collection, you will see, it is assumed, and of course there is a technical and lot of academic literature available that if the source of blood comes from a non-remunerated voluntary blood donation, then you are assured of some amount of safety. So though the mandatory testing etc. is always there. So you see that our blood supply, which was earlier 38% in 1996, which has rose to almost 95%, and we are trying to reach to even 99 to 100% also. Number of camps, we see that some few thousand to now almost more than 80,000. HIV seropositivity has also dropped. It is not only because of the blood transfusion services help, it is also the government has taken initiative by through NACO and MSAC and all other agencies, and of course the private sector also participated in that. So today the HIV seropositivity has come down, and HIV positivity in the voluntary blood donation has become almost, in Maharashtra at least, it is less than 1% or less than 0.05%. we are again proud now they embracing the technology and making this all this safe blood and making it available to the grassroots level. This is one of the another initiative taken by Government of Maharashtra, the Director of Health Services and SBTC, that just like you are ordering a pizza, somebody was referring earlier of embracing the robots and other things. So similarly, you just order a pizza. Like here, you dial 104 and you get the blood. So these are the riders here you must be seeing there. And this scheme has been recently launched in the month of January. Now it is almost 6 months and the results are very encouraging. By my center, at least every day 5 to 6 units are going across to the very needy patients, especially those patients who do not have their relatives with them, those patients who are landed in the surgery and they don't have any resources, those patients who have come in Mumbai without any resource to give their blood or blood products. So the clinician just dials up 104. This is again being highly appreciated in the parts of say Vidarbha, Nagpur and Gondia, Chandrapur, where the backward, so-called backward districts where a lot of health infrastructure is not available, and this 104 service is highly appreciated there and is being highly used there. Again, Government of Maharashtra has taken another initiative. Especially these diseases like thalassemia, hemophilia and sickle cell, and of course now they added use MDS, cancer patients, aplastic anemia. All those patients who requires blood and blood product is only their lifeline. If they do not have any other alternatives or high care technology is not available to them, then probably this is the only lifeline for them, and for them lifelong the blood will be supplied free of cost and it is being freed. I am very proud that today my collection is almost 1 lakh. Out of that 30 to 40% goes to hemophilia, thalassemia and sickle cell, and it is totally free. And these are the technologies we have adopted. There is a registration involved. The monitoring agency SBTC issues such identity cards across the state. Anywhere this card is shown, any blood bank is supposed to oblige or honor that card and give whatever the blood is required. This is another state-of-art facility which has started, which I am now heading there as a medical director, and which is the only country, is the only setup in the country which is NABH accredited in a public sector. Lot of NABH accredited blood banks are there, but majority of them, or most of them rather, are in corporate sector. So here this is a facility. Luckily this is also situated in one of the heritage building where Dr. Hopkins started his pioneering work and developed the plague vaccine. In the same lab, today our blood and blood product is there. So probably there is some coincidence of prudence here that we are also situated there and giving a lot of service to our community. So what are the main highlights? It's almost 35 to 40,000 units of blood collection, 1 lakh components are being made out of it, 100% component collection, 100% voluntary blood collection, approximately 350 our outdoor blood donation camps are there. Almost every day, say around few hepatitis donors, especially when dengue, malaria and other crises are there, or the cancer patients who require particularly the selective product like SDP, etc. being made available. Blood centers have gone ahead. So all these things, these are the vans we are using, these are the facilities. Yes, embracing the technology. This is a hi-fi gel technology, fully automated. So you just load the sample, you get the results. So grouping, cross-matching, everything is being done there automatically. At any time 10 to 15,000 units are stored. This is another embracing the technology. This is a very highly active website. I request you to appeal to you to, if you are not visited, go and visit this. There is a lot of information given. Where is the blood available? Which blood banks is nearer to all your patients? So this is how it gives in a rough this thing. Yes, I am wrapping up. And this is very, even ordinary or common person also is in the need of that. Either they can dial up now 104 or they can dial up or they see this access and find out the nearest center. So all these things are there. So we have not just stopped here. So we know that the ongoing facility is there. Blood transfusion services being radicalized, being modernized. Now with the advent of the minimal invasive surgery which Dr. Puntammaikar was referring, naturally I will have also to revise my role. So now the cellular therapies, stem cell. So all these things probably the modern blood bank will start, will have to offer to the community and to our customers. So we are also gearing up, and this is one of the beautiful state-of-art facility likely to come in another 2 or 3 years time at Kharghar. New Bombay. So a lot of things are there. So recently we got the SBDC got the entire country the award of excellence at the hands of the Honorable Government of India Health Minister, and these are the dignitaries who are receiving this. So thank you very much. I think I have unfolded this thing. The initiatives have started from government. So I know it is always very easy to criticize the government, but lot of government has taken the initiative. So we took this opportunity of sharing our experience and unfolding you in front of that. Even there are some facilities in government who are NABH accredited, who are giving state of art services. In shortly another 2 or 3 months time probably will go offer a NAT testing facility also very shortly at very, very affordable, sustainable level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep.
Thank you, sir, for such an informative presentation. Now, it's a moment of pleasure for us that we have our chief guest with us today, Ma'am Chanchala Sandeep Kodre, Mayor, Pune Municipal Corporation. Ma'am, we welcome you here and we invite you on the stage, ma'am. I request Dr. Gupta to present a bouquet to ma'am, please. A big round of applause for our guest today. Ma'am, we will request you to address us and grace us with a few words, please.
नमस्कार. महाराष्ट्र हेल्थ केअर लीडरशिप अवॉर्ड आणि सुमित 2014 या विशेष कार्यक्रमासाठी उपस्थित आपल्या सर्वांचंच आणि संयोजकांचं मनपूर्वक आभार मानते. खरं तर आयुष्यात अतिशय महत्त्वाची गोष्ट असणारी हेल्थ, कारण आपण असं म्हणतो की हेल्थ इज वेल्थ, आणि आपण आयुष्याच्या मूलभूत गरजा ह्या 3च गोष्टींमध्ये चौकटीत अडकून ठेवल्या आहेत की अन्न, वस्त्र, निवारा. पण याच्याही पलीकडे जाऊन जर बघायचं झालं तर आरोग्य आणि शिक्षण या 2 गोष्टी अतिशय गरजेच्या आहेत की ज्या माणसाला जर आयुष्यात सक्सेस बनायचं असेल तर या दोन्ही गोष्टींची आवश्यकता आहे. आणि या 2 गोष्टी जर आपल्या बरोबर असतील तरच आपल्या आयुष्याची वाटचाल चांगल्या पद्धतीने चालू राहते. आरोग्य जर जपायचं असेल तर स्वतः अगदी छोट्या छोट्या गोष्टींपासून जर सुरुवात केली की सकाळी उठल्यापासून आरोग्य आपण आपल्या हातात कसं आहे आणि ते कसं जपलं पाहिजे ह्या गोष्टी तर आहेतच. आता प्रेझेंटेशनमध्ये पाहिलं किंवा इतर आपण सर्वजण ज्या योजना राबवतो किंवा मोठमोठ्या हॉस्पिटल्समध्ये असतात त्या गोष्टींच्या आधीची प्राथमिक उपचार किंवा प्राथमिक लेवल म्हणून जर आपण पाहिली तर त्या गोष्टी बऱ्याचशा आपल्या हातात असतात. आणि पूर्वी असं म्हटलं जायचं की ज्या गावामध्ये शिक्षक नाहीये, वैद्य नाहीये आणि नदी नाहीये त्या गावाला काही अर्थच नाही. तर ह्या गोष्टीवरून आपल्याला असं लक्षात येतं की वैद्य हा असलाच पाहिजे आणि शिक्षक असल्याशिवाय शिक्षण मिळणार नाही तेही आहे. आणि जर नदीच नसेल तर पाणी नाही म्हणजे आपल्याला जीवनच नाहीये, आरोग्य जगताच आरोग्य चांगलं ठेवताच येणार नाही. तर ह्या सगळ्या गोष्टीचा विचार केला तर परंपरा गोष्टीतून घडत आलेल्या ह्या सगळ्या गोष्टी की आपण आरोग्याची सुद्धा तितकीच काळजी घेतली पाहिजे. वेगवेगळ्या खाजगी हॉस्पिटल्समधून किंवा मोठमोठ्या वैद्यकीय कंपन्यांमधून मोठमोठे शोध लावले जातात, मोठमोठ्या गोष्टी नियोजन केलं जातं आणि लोकांपर्यंत आपण सुविधा कशा पुरवू शकतो यासाठी शोध लावून त्या पुरवल्या जातात. परंतु शासनाच्या माध्यमातून आणि महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातूनही आपण लोकांना अगदी सामान्यातल्या सामान्य नागरिकांना सुद्धा त्याचा फायदा कसा होईल आणि त्यांचं आरोग्य कसं चांगलं राखलं जाईल आणि त्यांच्या आरोग्यासाठी ज्यांना आर्थिक सहाय्याची कमतरता आहे तिथे आपल्याला कशी मदत करता येईल असं शासनाने आणि महानगरपालिकेने बऱ्याचशा योजना केल्या. त्याच्यामध्ये शासनाची अतिशय एक महत्त्वाची म्हणजे जननी सुरक्षा योजना की ज्यावेळी एखाद्या महिलेची डिलिव्हरी झाल्यानंतर त्यावेळी परिस्थिती नसते बऱ्याचशा सामान्य कुटुंबातल्या किंवा स्लम एरियातल्या महिलांची की चांगल्या हॉस्पिटलमध्ये जाऊन हॉस्पिटलाइज होणं आणि आपलं सगळे उपचार व्यवस्थित करून घेणं. अशा वेळी मग महानगरपालिकेच्या हॉस्पिटल्समधून आपण जी शासनाची योजना आहे ती पुरवण्याचं काम करतो. डिलिव्हरी झाल्यानंतर 7 दिवसाच्या आत त्या महिलेच्या खात्यावर बँकेत 600 रुपये जमा होतात आणि त्याचा उपयोग नंतर त्यांना होतोच, पण त्याही पलीकडे आपण त्याची अगदी व्यवस्थित काळजी घेत असतो. दुसरी एक चांगली योजना शहरी गरीब योजना, की ज्या पालकांना किंवा जो पेशंट आज ॲडमिट आहे हॉस्पिटलमध्ये आणि त्यांना जर परिस्थिती नसेल की आपल्या हॉस्पिटलचं जे बिल आहे ते बिल भरण्यासाठी जर परिस्थिती त्यांच्याकडे तेवढी नसेल, तर महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातून शहरी गरीब योजनेतून हॉस्पिटलचा जेवढा खर्च त्याला आलेला आहे त्यातलं 1 लाख पर्यंतची मदत महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातून दिली जाते. त्याचबरोबर फॅमिली प्लॅनिंग सुद्धा महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातून केलं जातं, जसं की जलद सुलभ मोफत नसबंदी, म्हणजे आपण फोनवरून किंवा प्रत्यक्ष स्लम एरियाजमध्ये सर्वे करून ज्या महिलांना या ठिकाणी फॅमिली प्लॅनिंगचे ऑपरेशन करायचे असेल ते लेझर ट्रीटमेंटच्या द्वारे महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातून त्या स्लम एरियातल्या स्त्रियांची सर्वे केला जातो आणि ज्यांना त्या गोष्टीची गरज आहे तर त्यांची सुद्धा ती गरज त्या ठिकाणी भागवली जाते. किशोरवयीन मुलींचं सुद्धा आजकाल आपण पाहतो की हिमोग्लोबिन फार कमी असतं, मग त्यासाठी सुद्धा आपण महानगरपालिकेच्या सर्व शाळांमध्ये किशोरवयीन मुलींचं हिमोग्लोबिन चेक करतो आणि अशा मुलींना त्या ठिकाणी औषध पुरवठाही महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातून केला जातो. सांगण्याचा उद्देश एवढाच की आपण प्रायव्हेट डॉक्टर्स, आपल्या प्रायव्हेट कंपन्या लोकांपर्यंत आपल्या योजना आणि आपल्या जे काही आपण तयार केलेलं औषध आहे किंवा आपण ज्या काही सोयी देणार आहोत त्या पुरवत असतोच, परंतु त्या सर्वच लोकांना उपभोगता येतात, त्याची सुविधांचे फायदा घेता येतो असं नाही. मग अशा लोकांसाठी आपल्याला शासनाच्या माध्यमातून महानगरपालिकेच्या माध्यमातून नक्कीच मदत होते. आणि शेवटी बिल कमी करण्यासाठी आम्ही आहोतच. काही लोकांचं बिल जास्त आलं तर आम्ही तुमच्यासारख्या लोकांना हॉस्पिटलमधील डॉक्टरांना थोडा त्रास देतो की या पेशंटचं बिल थोडंसं कमी करायचं, परिस्थिती नाही वगैरे वगैरे. अशा वेळी आपल्याकडून खूप चांगली मदत होते. त्याचबरोबर काही NGOज आहेत, काही संस्था आहेत, आपल्या पुणे शहरामध्ये सुद्धा कितीतरी चांगल्या संस्था आहेत की रोटरी क्लब असेल, पूर्णा क्लब असेल, अजून बरेचसे क्लब आहेत की जे गोरगरिबांसाठी एक चांगल्या योजना राबवत असतात. मग त्यावेळी ते आपली रुबेला लस असेल किंवा हिमोग्लोबिन चेकअप असतील किंवा डोळे तपासणी असतील, चष्मे वाटप, ऑपरेशन्स, वेगवेगळ्या अनेक सुविधांमध्ये या संस्थांची सुद्धा नेहमीच आम्हाला मदत होत असते. आणि कधीही या संस्थांकडे आम्ही मदतीची साथ दिली तर आम्हालाही त्याची नक्कीच मदत होते. आणि मदत हे करतो ते फक्त एक सामाजिक बांधिलकीच्या भावनेतून. प्रत्येकाच्या मनात एक सामाजिक बांधिलकी असते, कितीही कुणी छोटा असो किंवा मोठा असो, प्रत्येकाच्या मनात एक मानसिकता असते, एक करुणा असते की नाही आपल्याकडून एक काहीतरी चांगलं, दिवसातून एक तरी चांगलं काम व्हावं. मग अशा वेळी आपण ज्यावेळेस समाजसेवा करण्यासाठी ज्यावेळेस या क्षेत्रात उतरतो, तळागाळातल्या लोकांपर्यंत पोहोचून काही का होईना आपण थोडंसं करायला हवं अशी जेव्हा मानसिकता तयार होते त्यावेळेस निश्चितच या संस्था नक्कीच पुढे येतात आणि आपल्या सर्वांना मदत करत असतात. याही पलीकडे जाऊन असं म्हणेन की जे काही मोठे हॉस्पिटल्स आहेत त्यांना सुद्धा माझं आव्हान असेल की अशा काही केसेस असतील की खरंच त्यांची परिस्थिती नाहीये पैसे भरण्याची, अशा वेळी सुद्धा सगळे डॉक्टर्स तर मदत करतातच, पण तरीही एक पुणे शहराचे प्रथम नागरिक म्हणून किंवा एक सामान्य नागरिक म्हणून आपल्याला विनंती राहील की आपणही अशा पेशंटची नक्कीच त्या ठिकाणी दखल घ्यावी आणि अशा लोकांना नक्कीच मदत करावी. आणि शेवटी असं समजलं जातं की परमेश्वरानंतरचा जो दुवा जर कोण असेल आपल्याला आयुष्य देण्यासारखा तर तो केवळ डॉक्टर असतो. मग अशा वेळी डॉक्टरांनी त्यावेळी आपला प्रॅक्टिकल विचार सोडून, आपला पेशा सोडून एक माणुसकी म्हणून, एक परमेश्वराने पाठवलेला या ठिकाणचा आपण दूत आहोत हे समजून समोरच्या पेशंटला मदत केली तर निश्चितच एखाद्याचं आयुष्य वाचू शकतं असं मला या ठिकाणी सांगावंसं वाटेल. आणि आपण सर्वजण सामाजिक बांधिलकीच्या हेतूनच कायम काम करीत असतो. इथून पुढेही चांगलं काम सर्वांकडून असंच चांगलं होत राहील आणि सर्व सायंटिस्ट कडून, मोठमोठ्या हॉस्पिटल्स कडून अजूनही चांगले चांगले शोध निघतील आणि सामान्यातल्या सामान्य नागरिकांपर्यंत अवघडातल्या अवघड आजाराचं निदान होईल असे आपल्याकडे मेडिसिन्स उपलब्ध होतील अशा या ठिकाणी अपेक्षा आशा व्यक्त करते आणि या कार्यक्रमासाठी मनपूर्वक शुभेच्छा देते आणि संयोजकांचा आभारही मानते की खरंच जर बाकीच्या सर्व गोष्टी आपल्याला गरजेच्या आहेत तर त्या भोगण्यासाठी आरोग्य महत्त्वाचं आहे आणि त्या आरोग्यावर तुम्ही आज सेमिनार घेतले. प्रत्येकाकडून वेगवेगळ्या आतापर्यंत माहिती मिळतात, प्रत्येकाने कशा पद्धतीने काम केले, प्रत्येकाच्या योजना एकमेकाला समजतायत आणि या कम्युनिकेशन मधून या करस्पॉन्डिंग मधून एक अजून वेगळी प्रणाली प्रक्रिया निर्माण होईल आणि त्याचा फायदा या जगातील कमीत कमी आपल्या महाराष्ट्रातील लोकांना नक्कीच होईल असं मला वाटतं. धन्यवाद. जय हिंद, जय महाराष्ट्र.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your inspiring speech and letting us know that how the moral duty healthcare is for human beings. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now I request session chair to please continue with the session. We have left with one speaker.
Thank you, Karthik. So now I request Dr. Samita Jadhav to present.
Yeah. Respected Srimati Chanchala Kodre, the first citizen of Pune city, dignitaries on the dais, off the dais, and my dear colleagues, a very good afternoon to all of you. I know we are approaching lunchtime and the gastronomic juices are really running, so I'll just make it very short. Give me 5 minutes, please. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this August gathering. We have heard since morning that a lot of innovations are happening, the technology is advancing, scientific methodologies are developed, and even right now, at this very moment, all over the world, new inventions are happening in terms of technology. We also learned that there are 6.5 lakhs doctors that are getting trained every year, but we also should realize that we require double the amount of nursing professionals and quadruple the amount of technologists. I was invited by the Ministry of Health and Welfare, Government of India, for developing the manpower across the states in India. Our team had invited almost 300 experts from the field of allied health sector, not only doctors but healthcare professions as well as the government sector. Not to leave alone the academic training sector. What we realize that, I'll just tell you one report. We know about Hyderabad, the Silicon Valley of India. We know that Hyderabad has the most number of scientific technology parks, molecular diagnostic labs. We also know that there are more than 200 hospitals in Hyderabad, and each hospital would have a minimum bed strength of 50 to 100. That would require about 2,000 technologists. And where was the training center in Hyderabad? There was no training center. The technologists come from all over India to Hyderabad, and Hyderabad does not have a training center. That's extremely sad. The ecosystem in India is such that we are concentrating on development of doctors, scientists and professionals of very high caliber. But as you might understand, and I think Dr. Shailesh and Dr. Srihari Dhore Patil would vouch for it, surgeons, when they come into the surgery, they require nursing staff as well as the technologists and a team of manpower that are going to assist them. Today, a surgeon is not looked at a person or a medical doctor having just two hands. He is the imagery of a Indian, mythological goddess having multiple arms. Where are the multiple arms? Are we even thinking of training them? Yes, we have come a long way. In the morning, Dr. Vellumani, he mentioned about, a 15-gram thyroid gland producing 15 crore of business. How was it? It was through volumes. And how could the volumes be attained? This was only because technology was with us. We have automation. Kodre madam has just mentioned that hemoglobin is the mainstay of diagnosis for anemia. Now, if we understand, there are many doctors here, hemoglobin testing was done by Sally's method, which was just a manual method. Today, we have cell counters doing the same process. Dr. Sai, how many times did we have an argument, oh, your hemoglobin report is not correct? Is it not correct because the instrument is not really, giving the good results? Or is it because the manpower has not been trained? And mostly it is the manpower. So where are the training centers? Now, as Dr. Rajiv in the morning mentioned, Symbiosis has done a pioneering effort in, bringing up an institute where we train specializations, especially in respiratory care, cardio technologies, dialysis technologies, imaging technologies and clinical lab technologies. But is it enough? In fact, today the health sector skill training center has come up in a big way where the partnerships are offered to private sector to develop manpower. Now we need to understand that there are a lot of autonomous institutes, but autonomous institutes, though some of them are of a high caliber, we need to understand that training has to be a continuous effort. For the training, we also need to get in the students from various backgrounds. And I'm not saying it is only from the urban areas, it should be reaching the rural area. Because rural India is where, technology has also reached. Their training is a requirement. We are seeing molecular diagnostics, nanotechnology, even telemedicine coming into the picture. Here we need to train students who are pursuing a BSc medical technology and an MSc medical technology. Today they can also pick up a PhD. In fact, one of my students, he went all the way from BSc, MSc, and now he is doing a PhD. However, sad to say that he is now in Oman. In Oman, when I reached there, the scenario was very different. It was a scenario where there was an emergence from camels to cars, but now they have understood in Omanizations where they are training their healthcare professionals. So if they are thinking of training the healthcare professions, obviously our trained manpower will not be able to enter that domain anymore. We need to understand that training is something that cannot be done once and for all. It has to be a continuous effort. So I implore to all the medical professional bodies as well as hospitals, Dr. Bobre is here, they have been helping us to send the students into the various hospitals for taking hands-on training. We also believe in simulation training as the aviation industry has trained. So we do introduce mannequins. We also have introduced the basic life support and the advanced cardiac life support, and this has to be given to all the technologies. It is not alone nursing as well as the medical professionals. Imagine in a lab if somebody collapses and is not able to get a simple BLS. It's sad, isn't it? Also, soft skill training is most important. Now, if you have, all of us, are from the medical profession, and some of us may have, gone to a doctor and got a report. He says you could go to a pathologist. Pathologist says you go to a technologist or technician rather. So you go to a technician and get the report. Now, consider this scenario. Oh, the technician reads out the report and says he's got cancer. दोन दिवस तुम्ही परत या. नाही पण मला वाटतं हा पेशंट आहे ना 1 महिन्यात आता दगावेल, म्हणजे ही विल डाय. is this the report you want from a technician to be handed over to you? Most of us would want, the diagnosis to be told by the medical doctor who you have approached. And this is the training in soft skill that we need to give to the cadre of the technologists. I think there is a lot more to be said and a lot more that can be talked of. But at this forum, I just request all of us to participate in the training of, healthcare at the lowest rungs. May it be a 10th standard student who has he wants to do a technician training program. Let us see that the training program is given to him and he does better. He is given a better cadre even in the the public sector, and slowly the training is given at all rungs. I'm again thanking all of us, here to gather at such a gathering, and the organizers have made such a good effort to bring us all together. I thank them all. Thank you so much.
Dr. Samita. So now it is my turn, and we are already delayed because we started 45 minutes late, so we are 35 minutes now. So we still have 10 minutes as per that time schedule. The first thing I want to say before this presentation is coming here that I am a little bit of, again, out of the group because I'm not from the healthcare. I'm actually a technologist. So I'm from the technology background. And let us see how the technology can be actually utilized and what are the various things already we have done in India, and we are also, we can do it. So I have put some of the slides here. Positively, a lot of things will be already known to you. So Ms. Chanchala Madam, first citizen of Pune. So with your permission, I am starting my presentation. So if we see, AT&T has said, we believe that the use of technology and smart networks can create a healthier world. Dell, breakthroughs in information gathering, research, treatments, and communications have given medical providers new tools to work with and fresh ways to practice medicine. USA President Barack Obama recently, last year, our recovery plan will invest in electronic health records and new technology that will reduce errors, bring down costs, ensure privacy, and save lives. So this is not the problem of India. Even the USA President also has to give a similar remarks which we are talking here. If we see the ecosystem, the patient ecosystem, not hospital ecosystems, I am changing the total paradigm from the hospital to the patient side. If you see the patient ecosystem, the first thing which is in the top, which I have written, is agreeing care plan with patient. Do we do it? See, patient is the important thing here, not the hospital or doctors or the support staff. So always before doing anything on the patient, we should have an agreement with the patient. We should explain to the patient that this is what is your problem and this is what we are going to do. So that is the first thing, and the rest of the things will come from that point of view, that these are the treatments, these are the procedures we have to do on the patient, and then how to take it forward, and then take the rest of the things. Next, now patient has come, we have planned, we have got some agreed plan. We need the background of the patient. How we depend on the background, we ask the patient a number of questions, we get the answer. I am telling my own experience. My mother is sulfur allergic. She broke her knee, went to the hospital. Doctor asked a number of questions. She has given all the answers except saying that she is allergic to sulfur. And the first thing doctor has given is the sulfur injection. And you can understand after that what happened. Next 3 days, knee was a secondary problem. The primary problem was something else. I'm happy that anyhow she recovered from that, and it was a serious problem. So can we get that information somehow? The technology is available, which we are proposing also from National Institute for Smart Government. We have already given a proposal to Ministry of Health in Government of India that is it possible that on a biometric, like on a thumb impression, can we get some of the critical care information about the patient, even if the patient is unconscious. So with a biometric, some of the information. Next comes the mobile health. Is it possible that doctor can be somewhere else, the other people, experts can be somewhere else, and can communication be there through the mobile technologies or the communication technologies? Readiness of the hospital staff and telehealth, again the same thing, and the last thing is the patient experience. What is her experience after a particular process has been done? Technology can help us positively. There are so many technologies available. First is EMR. Already Palash has presented that, Archana has presented that on EMR, electronic medical record, how it can help. Telemedicine already has been presented. Mobile health, medical imaging, all these things are presented. I'm not going into details. Integrated health portal. This is one area where actually Government of India has taken an initiative, and there is the that health portal, that project is in a full swing now. Same thing is also required for the standardization of the portal and standardization of all this process. Even that is also going on in the health initiative in the Government of India. So there is a different group is working on that. So that is another important thing. We have seen telehealth, we have seen telemedicine, various centers are there, but these are all human operated centers. Is it possible to create some kiosks where all those technologies will be available? You can just sit there and put those bands, and automatically the data will be captured, and you will be automatically connected to a doctor in some hospital. Wearable technologies, I think it has become a very fad now with the jogging people. They put something on a wrist and find out how much calorie they have burnt. There are a lot of wearable technological devices available nowadays, which gives, other than that, also a lot of good information, important information. And real-time location information. This real-time location information may not be directly involved with healthcare, but it is involved with some of the other things like accidents related thing, like where some of the blood information is recorded. You need some blood group, you don't know where it is available. If you can get location information that at this particular location blood is available, you can get it very fast. So there are some of the supportive or support things, activities, the location based information can be utilized. There are some success stories. Janani, already we have heard a lot of, I think that was one of the first very important project which has been done throughout India. 108, that is the ambulance service, again throughout India. I'm the designer of that 108 2004. We started this design 2006. The first implementation happened in Andhra Pradesh. In Hyderabad, I'm from Hyderabad, so in Andhra Pradesh the first implementation, and then rest of the country slowly we are doing. Low cost testing facilities, a number of low cost testing facilities, even the home testing facilities is available nowadays. We can utilize them. Availability of the medicines at various places. Why I have put it as a technology here, the reason is that during our study in 4 states, that is Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Haryana and Odisha, we found that in a lot of places, primary health centers mainly, primarily, where the medicines are not available, whereas some of the other places the same medicine is available and it is not being used and the expiry date is getting over. So is it possible to use technology to find out where the medicine is available, number one. Number two is that when it is getting over. So create some requirement using some automated indenting facility. And at the same time, where it is available, can you get it very fast. So the medicines, we have again done a project for Andhra Pradesh, we have implemented there. Telemedicine, we have already discussed about it. And this is another point which I want to mention is the collection of data at source. And again, technology is very important here. Because what is happening, I'll just give you one simple example. That is, if, let us consider there are 10 ASHA workers or ANMs, they went to the village, a particular village, and they got 4 patients having fever. and a particular type of fever. Now every ASHA workers, they think only 4 fevers are there, it is not a problem. So they give the record to the primary health center. When they give the record, only next day or sometimes when they go for 2-3 days, and after coming back they give the report there. Primary health center collects the report and then send it to the some of the nearest the district, and there only we get the we collect the information and we find out that there are 40 cases of fever is there. In one village 40 cases of fever at the same time means something is wrong. But if we use technology and that ASHA workers can just put that diagnosis as an SMS to a centralized location, again we have already implemented it in Andhra Pradesh and some of the other places. Automatically system can generate that there is a problem, please send a team, get the collection, collect the blood from them and do the testing in next 2-3 hours or 4 hours. You may get a malaria very fast within 6 hours in place of after 4 days. So collection of data at source. So these are the areas we have done. A lot of other areas that are just telling some of them, and again I'm just adding to him that the government is doing a lot of things. It's not true that government is not doing. Coming to that innovation, so what are the innovative ideas we can use? So first thing is that what do patient wants? So this is the discussion throughout the day we are listening. Patients want to be treated as a person, not as a number. In most of the hospitals it's as a number. They go and get a registration ID and everything happens on registration ID. They even don't accept the operation theatre. They don't ask the name. So is it possible to create a human environment in the hospital so that the patient feels at ease? So that is the main thing. So there is a paradigm change we are looking for. We need automated workflow. We need patient-centric solutions. Evidence-based medicine. It is now available. There are various procedures, various your databases are available where evidence-based medicine is possible. Standards, India has already made a standard 2 minutes. And portal is also there, and the information decision. At the same time, with the technology, we also need some the process reengineering. So some of the processes has to be changed, like how the workflows can be changed. We have to create an efficient workflow. We are collecting data, how accurate the data is, so check the data accuracy, do the analysis on the data and find out whether what we are doing is correct or not, and also the decision supports. So we have to create a standardized data easily available, automated workflows, use of analysis tools, and evidence-based medicine. 2 more slides. So one is that what are the various new technologies available other places which we can bring. 3D printed biological materials. Now everywhere we are talking about 3D printers. 3D printers is used in every domain. Why not in healthcare domain? So can we create some skin, develop some skins for the burn victims, develop some embryonic stem cells or something using the 3D printers? Then digestive pills are available nowadays. That pills actually you can just swallow it. It remains in your body for 3-4 days or a week till it gets digested and automatically flushed out from your body. When it is inside, it collects a lot of data and it automatically sends the data to a sensor nearby. And then very important, hybrid operating room. The operating room should not be a separate unit within the organization. It should be an integrated unit, and maybe we can change the design of the operating room in a manner that the rest of the things are very nearby available. Again, I can give one of my personal experience. I was entered in the operating theatre OT for some operation purpose, and they asked a number of questions, and the last question, one of the question was that, have you taken any water? I said yes. When? I said 10 minutes before, just before coming in. And you can understand immediately that OT was postponed and I was taken out again, and after 2 hours. Now a question comes is that I have been told that don't take any food, but I have never been told don't take even water. And just before going in, and I was nervous positively, so I asked my wife, can you give me some water? I just drank the water and entered the operation theatre. Now this is a process. So if that process is automatically there, then positively this doesn't happen. So I just wanted to say a few words here. I know the time is very less, so that is my end. And we'll just I don't know whether time is there for some questions. Then no time is there for the questions, so we can have the questions when we are having lunch offline. Thank you very much. I also want to thank all the panel members as a session chair that there was a very nice presentations, and also particularly thank to Madam Mayor that for coming in a perfect timing when my session is going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Session Chair. And I will now request our, I'll request Ma'am Chanchala Sandeep Kodre, Mayor, Pune Municipal Corporation, to present mementos to our speakers, please. Please, ma'am, please. We start with the Session Chair, Mr. Chakravarti. Then Ma'am Archana Samudra. She is Vice President, Palash Healthcare Systems Private Limited. Dr. Shailesh Pantambekar, Managing Director, Galaxy Care Hospital, Pune. Dr. Praveen D. Poddar, Head, Department of Molecular Medicine and Biology, Jaslok Hospital Research Center, Mumbai. Dr. Sandeep Solanke, Medical Director, JJ Mahanagar, Blood Bank, Mumbai. Last but not the least, ma'am from Symbiosis. I request ma'am to present the memento. Now I request our program chair, ma'am Meeta Rajiv Lochan, Secretary, Department of Public Health, Government of Maharashtra, to present a memento to our guest, ma'am Chanchala Sandeep Kodre. A big round of applause for our guests and our speakers. I request for a group photo with our chief guest of the day and our program chair and all the panelists, and Dr. Ravi Gupta as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now we are breaking for lunch. We'll be back after 45 minutes.